Welcome to So Much Fun. I'm Colleen Murphy and I teach sewing. Today we're going to do the fly front zipper. So I'm going to talk to you about pattern and resources, also the tools that you're going to need, and we're going to do it step by step. And actually there are 9 steps. Now that might sound a little intimidating, but I think by the time we finish you're going to see it's really not that hard. And we're going to focus on women's pants, which means the overlap is on the right hand side. Remember, women are always right, and for the men it's on the left side. So if you think you're going to be really focusing more for men, you may have to make a different set of samples, but it will be for the left side rather than the right side. So let's get started. Now here is my completed fly front zipper, and I think it looks pretty good. And I've had this for several years. You can tell the style has pleats in the front, and that's not a current style. But in looking at this, would you know how to do it? And the answer is no. You can see that it's all in place, but how do you start, and what are the various steps to do a fly front zipper? So we're going to start by looking at some resources for the fly front zipper. Now here is just one pattern that has the fly front zipper, but you really don't even have to have a pattern. You can add that to your pants pattern, even if the pant pattern is for a left hand zipper opening or even a back zipper opening. But anyway, here is one that is specifically for a fly front zipper, and it is Vogue, and the number is 7881. And I looked at the date on the back, and this came out in 2004. It's a classic pant style, and I wanted to look at it to see what the instructions were for doing the fly front zipper. And I also used it for making my pattern to demonstrate all the steps for doing a fly front zipper. So I'm going to put this aside. Like I said, I use this for my pattern, and here is the pattern itself. And notice that I have made a point of showing that this is considered the right side of your pant. And you flip it over, that's the left side of your pant. Big point, because if you are using fabric where it's very difficult to see the difference between the right side and the back side, you ought to mark it in some fashion. I also went on and drew the markings for where we stitch and where the fold line is for the right side, and then the fold line for the left side, and put what those markings are. All right, so this was the pattern I used, and I cut it out 9 times. Did you hear that? I cut it out 9 times because I'm such a believer in samples, and the fact that when you have samples, you need to show what do you do at step 1, what do you do at step 2, and so on. And so for the fly front zipper, the source I used for the steps was the Singer Sewing Pants That Fit book. And so you don't always have to follow what the pattern says. You can make your own decision about your source for how you do the pants. But if you have never bought or seen the Singer reference library, find them in the half price bookstore, and they are great. And I have about 24 books, and they're all on a different topic. This one obviously is about pants, but they have them for home decor, they have them for children, costumes. I'm trying to think of all the different tailoring. Great resource. I highly recommend them. So in here, I found the steps for the fly front zipper right here. Okay, and this is what we're going to use. But you can find information, similar information in other books. And this is another one that I looked through that I think is good. The Reader's Digest has a great book for sewing. and it was similar, not exactly the same. And as I always say to people, you'll find that there's always more than one way to do it. But I took the Singer book over this one, but this one is still good. Okay, this has illustrations and the Singer book has photographs. A third book, I thought, oh, this one will have it too. And I was disappointed in this one. I mean, other things about the book are good, but I just felt like they've got 18 steps here. And for a beginner or even one who has some sewing experience, you'd look at that and you say, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to do this. So I didn't think that this was a good choice for going through the steps to do the fly front zipper. So I settled on the Singer book, but I checked some other books that I really thought were going to have information about the fly front zipper, and I was surprised. I imagine you've heard of Nancy Zeman. She published several books, and she was on TV with videos, and she didn't have it. And that was really surprising. Maybe I just didn't have the right book, but I have several of her books as well. Okay, now enough about that. So we're just going to take this reference book here, and we're going to follow it, all right? And we're going to step by step. So again, I cut out 9 sets for this project so that you will see how we do step 1, how we do step 2, and so on. Before we begin step 1, let's talk about what you actually need. You obviously are going to need fabric. In addition to that, pins. And I use paper scissors to cut the ends of the zipper. After I install the zipper, I don't want to use my good fabric scissors, so I'll use my paper scissors to cut off the ends of the zipper itself. I use soap. Now, it really depends on the fabric that you're using. You know, a lot of times with a fly front zipper, it might be for corduroy or wool, something like that. I don't think the soap will work, but if you were doing jeans or denim fabric, then this would work. I really like using the soap for marking my fabric because I know I don't have to worry about that leaving any residue. You know, when the garment's washed, that's just going to disappear. So soap is something that I use for a lot of my projects. If you don't have one of these, I would recommend you getting one if you think you're going to be making more than one pair of pants with a fly front zipper. It's really nice because it has these little, I don't know what you want to call those, little nubby things, I guess. And on one side, it's 1 1/4 inches, and on the other side is 1 inch. And it's really good for marking where you're sewing the fly front zipper. I've had this for several years. I don't think they're very expensive at all, but I would highly recommend one. You know, if you're not going to be making more than one pair of pants, you can get by without it, but I would recommend that one. We always need a seam ripper. And you're going to do some hand basting, so I just go ahead and get my needles threaded up for that, and I have black and I have white because I want to be able to see it, so that I have this ready. I use these scissors for when I cut the seam below where the zipper is. At one point, they're going to tell you to cut it to 1/4 of an inch, and I would much rather use these scissors than my big fabric scissors. And then, of course, I've got these for cutting thread. Then in addition to that, interfacing, you're going to need fusible interfacing. And I just have this one piece left. And I only put it on the right side of where the zipper is going to be, not on the left side, just the right side. And then this is the pattern piece actually from the Vogue pattern that I mentioned earlier. And I use that as my pattern for cutting the interfacing, fusible interfacing. Okay, Now that we know all that, let's talk about what we do with step 1. And in step 1, they're telling us that we need to cut our fusible interfacing, which is just what I was talking about. And I'm saying that you're doing this just for the right side or the upper side of the zipper. And then in addition to that, you are to cut for the what we call the fly shield. And that should be 4 inches wide. Let me put this here. Let me put this here. It's the fly shield, and you're cutting it 4 inches wide, the depth of your zipper. So I, of course, cut several of these, and notice I went on an inner serge. You don't have to, but I like to have the seams finished, and actually, if we follow it to the letter in the directions, it says to either you do something to finish this off by serging, or you can use pinking shears. Pinking shears is a great way to do it, and for many, many years, that's what women did. I know that because my mother did, but they didn't have sergers. That hadn't been introduced to the domestic market until the mid-1980s. So they used pinking shears, but some way or another, I'm not keen on folding it over and doing a straight stitch because I know that adds bulk. But you will need a fly shield cut 4 inches wide and the depth of your zipper facing. Okay, that's step 1 actually, so that's pretty easy. So now we're going to get ready to actually do some sewing. Step 2 tells you to finish the raw edge of your fly facing, and I have serged. It is in white thread, and of course my interfacing is also white, so it might be a little difficult to see, but I have serged all of my facings, and from that point they're telling you that you are going to stitch your crotch seam using short stitches. So normally I use a 3 stitch length, but in this case I went to 2 because you don't want those stitches to pull out. And it says beginning about 1.5 inches from the crotch point and ending at the bottom of the zipper opening, and be sure to backstitch. So here is the example. From this point over for where the stitches will begin, that's 1.5 inches. You're doing a 5/8 inseam, and I relocated the point where I want to stop. I had it up too high originally, and after I've been making all these steps prior to this video, I decided to move it down, and actually that is what the instructions say, so I should probably read those instructions myself. So we're going to stitch this. We're just going to go from this point to this point. So let's go to the sewing machine. All right, before I start, I know you can't see the screen, but I changed the stitch length setting to 2. And then I want to position the needle so that it will be right at the mark that I have for 1.5 inches. And I'm going to lower my foot and make sure my needle is going to hit that at the 5/8. And all of my sewing machines have hold needle thread. I really want people to do that so that you don't get any extra thread underneath your fabric when you start to sew. So I'm going to do, it makes a knot, but I'm going to reinforce it even more. So I went forward 3 stitches, and now I'm going to reverse back 3 stitches. All right, so now we're ready to go. I'm looking at the 5/8 over here, making sure I keep it at 5/8. And I've got my dot there, so I don't have to keep the pin in there, because you know I don't want anybody to be sewing over pins. And actually, just last week, someone did and broke the needle. So just be careful about where you have your pins. Now I'm at the point where I want to stop, and I'm going to reverse back. I didn't hit the same place, but we know what to do. All right, when I'm finished, I have a machine where I can cut my thread. And once you do that and you pull your fabric away, Be sure you have enough thread. This one's very good. Of course, it should be for the price it was. You just pull that thread right out, so you have about 6 inches of thread. So here we are. We've got our crotch seam starting 1.5 inches from the edge, and we're stopping at the bottom of where our fly facing is. Okay, now let's go back and look at what step 3 is. So before we do step 3, let's talk again about the difference between doing the fly front zipper for men's pants versus women's. Men's pants will be just the opposite than women's. So the instructions I have here are saying to place a closed zipper on the underside facing. Well, for us women, that means the left side, and that's just the reverse for men. And I also, I'm a big believer in samples and having each step of the process. So I have a complete set for men going from step 1 to step 9 that will be in reverse of what women will do. Now, in reading the instructions through step 3, it says to have the edge of the zipper tape at the center front. So the center front, if you look on the pattern, the fold line left side is 1 1/4 inches from the edge. All right, 1 1/4 inches from the edge. So we're measuring here. I'm not very good at doing this upside down, but I'll do it when I get to the sewing machine. So we're going to go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew one side of the zipper tape to the underside or the left side of the pant facing. Now let's look at the instructions again for step 3. I just want to make sure we all are on the same page, as they say. It says place the closed zipper face down, and that's what I have. And notice you always, I didn't mention this earlier, your zipper should be longer than what you actually need, because you want that the tab to be up above the top of the pants. So I use a 9-inch zipper, but this actually will turn out to be closer to maybe 7.5, something like that. All right, so you place the closed zipper face down on the underlap facing, and for women, that's the left side, with the edge of the zipper tape at center front. All right, remember on that pattern, that is actually 1 1/4 inches. So it's saying edge of zipper tape. So here is the edge right there, and we measure that. That's exactly 1 1/4 inches. And then it says the zipper stop is 1/8 of an inch above the zipper opening. Well, this one is probably more than that, but we're going to stop about 1/8 of an inch from the bottom of the zipper opening. Okay, it says pin the outer edge of the zipper tape to the facing. Using the zipper foot, stitch the zipper tape to facing only. But we're going to be stitching on the left side. When you're looking at the zipper, you're going to be sewing on the left side of the zipper tape. So I'm going to set that aside so you can see. And I changed the settings on my machine so that I'm using a 3 stitch length. And let me get this over here, and I'm using thread so you can see where I'm sewing. Get this lined up here. You keep the zipper closed, and hopefully I'm going to put this down like that. All right, and we're going to do a couple of stitches forward, and then we'll go back to reinforce it. Again, I'm using a 3 stitch length, and we're just going to sew right down here. Take my pin out and continue. This is step 3, right? All we're doing is sewing the zipper in, and this is the left side for women. A few more, maybe that's enough right there, and I'm going to reverse back and cut it. remember always to pull your thread a little bit longer after you stop sewing a seam. Okay, I think that's all we have to do with step 3. Since we're still at the sewing machine, I brought over the sample for step 4, which says, fold your underlap facing, that's the left side, remember, to the wrong side, and machine baste next to the fold line. All right, that's just what you sewed in the last step. And that means this. Here is the zipper face down, and we're just going to flip it over like that. And the fold line is right there next to the zipper tape. And they're saying to baste. Now, I'm going to get that out of the way here. And I had to move. It depends on what kind of zipper foot you have with your machine. But I had to move the needle that had been on the right side. I had to move it over to the left side to do this step. And also remember, change your stitch length setting to the longest setting it will do. One nice feature of the Bernina is it goes to 6. I like that long length. So we're not going to do any reversing. We're just going to hold this folded edge right there next to the coil of the zipper. And I'm going to put that down right there and put the needle down. Hold the thread, and we're going to sew. So it's a basting stitch. Okay. And I think once you get into doing your fly front zipper out, if you do it a few times, you may make a few changes in how you do it, you know, just whatever works for you. I already know that I would probably, if I were doing it just for myself and not in demonstrating this, I would do it a little bit different, but I'm not going to go away from the directions. We're going to stick with them because I really think it is important that you start out by following the directions, all right, because they're there for a reason. All right, I'm going to pull out that thread. So now we've completed step 4. We've got the basting done that's going to hold that zipper in place. So let's go look and see what step 5 is. All right, before we go to the sewing machine, let's go over the instructions for step 5. It says match the center front markings at upper edge and pin. All right, what does that actually mean? Going back to the original pattern, the fold line is the center front on the right side of the pants. So in measuring from where that center front line is to the edge, it's 2 inches. So I've already done that for you. So here you're going to take your right side of the pant, fold it into the inside, and I measured here and it's right at 2 inches. So that's your first sentence with step 5. We're just going to have that folded under at 2 inches. This is considered the center front, and I'm just going to finger press it for now. Of course, you probably would want to use the iron. And also, a lot of the information here, probably you have to think about the type of fabric you're using. Again, if you're using wool or corduroy, something heavy, denim, you may have to make some adjustments as far as the steps that you're doing. So now we have that folded under. That was our first sentence. And then it says, from the wrong side, pin the remaining edge of the zipper. All right, here's the remaining edge of the zipper. Tape, the zipper tape, to the overlap facing. All right, this is the overlap facing. This is the right side. Overlap is right, underlap is left. I just keep saying these things over and over because I know when you start reading this, you can get a little confused. I know I can. So they're telling us to put this zipper tape to the facing, all right? So we have to turn this over because it says to the wrong side. On the wrong side, we want to have it right here like this, all right? So this is the overlap the right side to this remaining side of the zipper tape. And this is where we're going to sew. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, put the edge of the facing to the edge of the tape. All right, so I'm just going to stick one pin in here, oh, maybe two. And we're going to go over to the sewing machine and sew it. So the last sentence of step 5 says, with the facing held away from the pants are over here on my right, you're going to stitch the zipper tape to the facing. And as I tell everyone when they're learning how to sew, one step at a time. Read that sentence. If you don't understand it, read it again. If you don't understand it, read it again, and look at the illustration that goes along with the instructions. So here we go. We're using a 3 stitch length. We're not on the basting stitch any longer. We need to go back to the 3 stitch length. For me, anyway. Okay, I'm going to hold that thread, and I'm going to make a stitch. There we go. And that secured it, but we'll go back a couple of stitches just to be sure. I don't want this to come out. And then we're just going to sew right on down. All the way down. I'm probably giving you more information than you really need, but I just want to make sure that you understand what we're doing. Okay, I'm going to stop right there and reverse a couple of stitches. And cut my thread. Now, let's see what we've got here. I'm going to pull out that thread. I'm going to be cutting the thread, but let's just look. So now you've got the zipper stitched on both sides. And we're ready to look at step 6. It says, mark stitching line on right side of the pants about 1 1/4 inches from the center. Okay, so I've got my little ruler here to show you that's exactly 1 1/4. Now, I don't know if it shows or not, but what I did, I took what I recommended earlier when we were talking about it, and I put it, see those little dots there? That on this side is 1 1/4, on this side is 1 inch. So it was 1 1/4. That's what their instructions tell you. I just laid that right next to the fold, and then I marked it with soap, and that goes around like, well, something like that. Okay, so I marked it with soap first, and then it said hand baste next to stitching line if desired. Well, if you were again using wool or something different that had a pattern and everything, and you couldn't see maybe the soap is not your best choice, then you could hand baste your line. So it'll make it much easier for when you actually go to the sewing machine to sew this. So next step is going to be to stitch this line. You've got it, I marked it with soap first, then I went over it with hand basting, and now I'm going to go back and on the sewing machine, I'm going to stitch that line. I've sewn the seam that I was talking about in step 6. I've got that done. And now we're ready for step 7, which deals with the fly shield. And here is the fly shield, folded in half. It even tells you to do that. And also to finish up the edge, which I did at the serger. And on the shield itself, I have marked, because the directions tell you, I have to turn this around to read it, that you should, press the shield in half lengthwise. That's what I've done. Finish raw edges. That's what I've done. And now it says to place that shield under the zipper. I'm going to open this up like that. Place it under the zipper and have the folded edge about 1 inch beyond the zipper teeth. Okay, and so if we measure this, you're going to see that that is exactly 1 inch from the coil to the folded edge of the fly shield. And then you go to the sewing machine and you're going to sew actually right on top of those basting stitches that you did earlier. Just go right on top of them, and that will secure the shield to the zipper. Once you finish, the directions tell you to remove the basting, and that can be a little tricky. I have done that before, and you might want to, if you're making this as a sample first before you actually do your pants, to do the basting stitches in one color and then change that color for when you're sewing at this step. So now I have stitched right on top of the basting stitches, and I don't know if you can tell, but I actually did change the thread color to white so I could see the difference between the basting stitches and the stitches again that are at a 3-stitch length. So you just have to work a little bit when you get near the bottom of the zipper. You have to be kind of careful in sewing this, because you've got your overlap on top, of course, so you kind of have to pull that out of the way in order to get it down to the bottom. Now, here we are at step 8. We're getting near the end. It says stay stitch with the zipper open across both ends of zipper at upper edge. Well, stay stitching for me, the reason you're doing this is because we cut off the top of the excess length of the zipper. We don't want that hanging out there. So what I do for that stay stitching is to use the zigzag stitch, and I have 0 length, and the width is about, I'd say, 3.5. And I just go back and forth 6 times right over that coil, back and forth 6 times. And then you can actually add a fray check on that as well. Now, this is talking about putting it at the end, but then I looked at the other book and they said, which I thought made really good sense, that you really need to have it right about 5 inches, need to have it about 5/8 of an inch from the top edge, because see, you're going to be sewing a band across this top. So you can put it anywhere really within that space. If you have it at the very top, it's okay, or if you have it down a little bit, that's fine. But I would recommend doing a zigzag stitch just on the coil about 6 times. And you can do that with 0 stitch length, no length, just your width of about 3 or 3.5. So once you've done that, then you can cut off the extra length of your zipper. Now then, it also tells us in step 8 to clip the crotch seam allowance below the fly facing to within 1/4 of an inch of the stitching. So let's turn this to the inside here. And here is your crotch seam. And I'm afraid I went a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch, but I have it close, but I did not go through the stitches themselves. So that's all that is. It's just where this crotch seam is, you want to cut it, and that way, you know, this can be opened up if need be for the rest of your center seam. But that's all there is to step 8, is just securing your zipper before you cut it off, and then trimming, not trimming now, it's not trimming, it's just clipping, and that's why I like to use these scissors versus my large fabric scissors. Step 9 is, there's just a couple of things that they're saying to do for it, is to stitch or tack the lower end of our zipper opening to the let me turn this to the inside so you can see, to the fly shield, having the fly shield secured to the lower end of your zipper tape, and you have to do it, of course, from the wrong side. And so it's a matter of going, and in this case too, I would do what I did at the top of the zipper. I would just go back and forth about, I don't know, 5 or 6 times to keep that secure, so that the two facing, or the shield and the facing, are staying together. After you do that, then this is an optional thing because it ends with if desired, is to do a bar tack right here at the bottom of your zipper, where the stitching line is to do a bar tack to keep that secure. And it says if desired. So if you have this secure with a straight stitch, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do it that way. But if you want to, then set your stitch width with a zigzag very narrow, maybe 2, and just do a few stitches right there. It's just to keep that in place. And that's all there is to it. I hope this video will be helpful for you, and that you can see the value of having samples each step of the way. Of course, if you don't have the time to do that, you just need to watch my video again. Please subscribe and have so much fun.